Welcome everybody, Jason Overly with Overly Equipment. Say hi, Mags. Mags, say hi. Anyhow, there's my garage companion. This is Jason Overly with Overly Equipment, and we're going to dive in to, on the workbench as you see, is a torn apart Peerless 2500. That is the transaxle that goes in these Ford hydrostatics. Now, the 125 had them, the 145 and the 165 and the 195 used them. The 195 used the same transmission but had drum brakes. We will do a video on our 195 here, maybe on a nice warm day. It's pretty cold here in western Pennsylvania, late December. So anyhow, we want to go over this. I had a request to pull a hydrostat pump. Guy in Canada needed it. We pulled that. And then I had another request for an axle tube. So I said, well, why not? Let's just take the whole transmission apart, go through it. We can stock the gears and the parts and put them on the shelf. Then we could also do a little video on it to show you the internals of them. And they're pretty indestructible. I mean, within means. I mean, you can't run them out of oil. They'll blow up naturally. Most people either put the wrong oil in them, like ATF. These transmissions do not take ATF. The older Sunstrand hydros did. There's a difference between a Sunstrand and an Eaton 11 hydro gear. This is an Eaton 11 hydro gear. Excuse me. It's an Eaton 11 hydro gear 1100 series. They take universal trans hydraulic oil. Hy-Trans, same oil that's in your farm tractors, same oil. You could actually use 30 weight if you really wanted to, but we'll get into depth why they use it. When the manufacturer says use this, we use it. It says do not use a automotive multi-viscosity ATF. Right on the website. It's on my website. I actually copy and pasted the actual link from the Eaton website. Yes, Eaton, the same guys who make 18-speed, 13-speed Fuller transmissions with some big trucks, and the Cutler and Hammer MCC motor equipment control centers you see in power plants. Yes, that big company makes these transmissions, hydrostat gears, and they still make them till this day. They're like $3 grand, but they still make them to this day. So we'll do a little quick history on the Eaton 11 and the 2500 series Peerless. They've been around a long time. They're still making both parts till this very day. They're quite expensive. So naturally, lawn and garden tractors went cheaper, and they also went, most of them are compacts now. You know, New Hollands, Kubotas, that's all compacts. So the heavy garden tractors went away a long time ago because the components are so expensive to build these things. So the Eaton 1100 series pump is still made today. You can still buy it. Same thing with the Peerless 2500 series. And all you have to do is look at Steiner machines. The four-wheel drive tractors, the Steiners, same pump, same transaxle. It may have a different axle flange, bolt flange, 4-bolt, whatever they are used for different applications. Same transmission, identical, still made today. So look into it. Anyhow, so yeah, your Ford transmission, so to speak, is still built today in Steiner machines. I don't know what's all changed on them as far as bolt in, bolt, you know, I'm sure there's different aspects, but the same case in the pump is still basic the same as it was back in the 70s. So, and these transmissions can be found in other machines. I think John Deere 400 series uses them. Maybe the Sears FFA, the big Sears Supers. I don't know too much. I know Cub Cadet has their own. I know Will Horse has their own. I'm not sure who actually, I don't know what Alice Chalmers uses as far as in their, that real big long hooded 7014 or whatever that big Alice Chalmers was. I don't know what they used in that one. They may have their own thing. Simplicity built a lot of their own transmissions. Anyhow, let's go into depth about this transmission a little bit. I'm not going to get too crazy with it, but we're going to show you that anybody can tear these transmissions apart and repair them. You can still get all the gaskets and seals for them today through my website or online if you can find them. We have them in stock, all the axle seals, case gaskets, everything. So it's not that hard to, again, I'm not trying to sell parts here. can find them online, fine. You want to buy them through me, fine. That's great too. I appreciate it. My family appreciates it. But hey, to each is their own. Anyhow, the transmission isn't that big of a task. Is it a lot of work? Well, yeah, but that's anything you do. If you want to do anything correctly, it's going to take time. You know, that's just life in general. But anyhow, I'll go over. All right, so anyhow, sorry, the last video got cut a little short there. We're on this side of it, and I'm going to show you the internals of it. Now, you can see you got your third member, planetary, whatever you want to call the main rotating assembly for your axle rotating assembly. But anyhow, you can see your pump gear would come through here where my finger is, and it would turn this shaft right here, right? And you can't really turn it because I got the chain fall hooked on it so I could do a video. So this gear here would turn, that pump will turn that shaft. So you got two other gears on that shaft, and this gear that slides back and forth, okay? And this shaft turns, you can see it all turns that's where your brake band is. Well, that's your main input shaft there coming off the gear shaft coming through the hydro pump to the hydro pump. So anyhow, that slides back and forth on that, and that's how you move. This is your high and low range lever. It goes through that hole, it comes through the outside of the case. There's your outside of the case. That guy comes through there. This guy comes through that hole, and that connects to the outside to your lever. And we all know that's right, conveniently I have the loader here, that's that part right there. Your high and low range lever. So anyhow, the loader's getting new tires. The other one's dry rotted. We're gonna get new ag tires for on it. So conveniently, that was off so you guys could see that. Nice. Anyhow, getting back to that transmission. So you can see how that would slide that in you got your high gear and your low gear locks it in. You got two different sets of gears, and a lot of engineering goes into it for gears and all that other speeds and stuff that's above my pay grade. Well, you can see this one gear fell out, and that gear that fell out there actually rotates on this. All right, so that's why that sort of fell out there. It's not a big deal. It has to go back in. You have to wiggle it back in once you put the transmission back in. So you would want to lay this transmission down. I'm doing it for video purpose. You would want to put this side down so all the gears fall into place so you can put it back in. I'm just did this for demonstration purposes only. So anyhow, we're going to pull the gear, that axle housing, the axle assembly out. Okay, so we pulled the case apart, and as you can see, you got needle bearings in your case. That shaft will come out if I pull the brake drum on the other side off. Then that'll come out. It's got an Allen wrench screw, set screw in it and everything. You can see you got needle bearings in that. And we pulled all the gears apart because once this comes out, everything sort of wants us to fall out with it. So you got these thrust washers. Now you got 3 thrust washers. Them actually go over on your bearings, as you can see. So that's what those are used for. So pay attention when you take them apart, and make sure when you go to reuse them, you want to make sure you put them back in the correct spot. Now they're all the same thickness. I don't think that's a problem, but make sure you put them on that side. And it's not really that hard. There's not that many gears in here. You got your main shaft. Now all these gears. Let me see. All these gears don't show that much wear. I would assume the most wear you're going to get is going to be your high and low range gears. I could see them being getting worn over the years and maybe having a good bevel on them. And these ones don't look that bad at all. And as you can see, but I could see if you have them, you'd have problems with them, and you maybe need to replace them or something. But I would say most of the time these transmissions usually do not fail the transmission parts. It's usually the pump that fails, and it's usually lack of oil. We're not cleaning the fins out on the pump, and it overheats and destroys itself. It's usually not this. Now I've seen these cases, because these are aluminum, I've seen these cases break, and I've seen these cases break, and I rolled my eyes because you're probably thinking, okay, how did you see these cases break? Well, long time ago, me like a dummy, parked the tractor out in the yard, set the emergency brake on it, put it in neutral, and it was on a hill. Well, I guess the emergency brake or the parking brake wasn't exactly clicked in, and it sort of popped out. And then down through the yard it went ever so slowly, then it gained speed, and the back axle hit a tree. The one side, it hit the tire hit, and it snapped. Well, it's cast iron versus aluminum. Which one you think is going to give? Yeah, it cracked it. So, yeah. Don't do what I do. Just, you know, learn from my mistakes, people. Don't do what I do. But anyhow, we're going to tear that carrier apart, third member, housing, whatever you want to call it. We'll tear that apart, and we'll show you the in-depth of that as well. Okay, so this is where I wanted to explain the carrier differential and the limited slip process in this in the carrier. It's not like a true limited slip like, say, in an automotive differential, I guess, where some I guess use bands or different carrier sets up, and then, you know, everybody knows what a posi is, where it's a gear to gear and everything moves like a race car, pulling truck, whatever you want to call it. So you also have two different lengths axles. You got a left and a right axle. One's longer than the other. So anyhow, how this carrier works, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or not, or explain. Okay, so you have your main gear, right, that's spinning, and that wants to spin this whole thing, right? So it's going to be spinning like this. So when it spins at a slow speed, a slow ground speed, and you'll have the whole assembly spinning. Okay, so here we'll put this axle in here. Hopefully, let me take the sleeve off of it so I can grab a hold of it. So you have this whole, let's see if it'll let me do it, if I can get them all lined up. Of course, let's try this again. Anyhow, this ain't gonna work, me holding the camera. It's apart now. So this shaft would go in here like this, and the shaft on the other side. So when it's spinning, this whole thing wants to turn, and both axles turn. And as you can see, it fell apart because we don't have no bolts in it. But that's how the whole thing works. And when you put too much power to the ground, in other words, you mash the go pedal, the forward pedal, then that axle breaks traction with the other side. So there's two independent sections here. You got your ring gear, you got two independent sections here. All right, let me get some stuff out of the way. So now you can see how you have your open, put these back in here. Now you see how you have that open, these would spin independently with that axle separate. You don't understand what I'm saying? That ain't a solid axle. So as a low speed, the whole thing's turning, and it's got keys in here, so the whole thing's turning. But when this axle, say, gets on a bind, say it hits a root and it stops, well, it's going to let this carrier stop, this side spin free, and then you have your open differential. So at slow speeds, it sort of works like a limited slip in a way, but it's hard to explain. I'm not a big automotive guru. I know how different ones work in a car or a truck, and you can see how it's definitely different. And the Bohlins tractors, I do believe they use a big outside hub, and I have one, an outside hub, and some clutch bands that when you tighten the nut up, it pushes the keeper in, and it lets the outside hub lock in with a solid axle, because they have a solid axle that runs through their transmissions on a Bohlins tube frame, and it's got a big brass gear, and it's sort of set up this way, but it's a true posi once you lock that nut in, because that's a solid axle and you can't steer them. I have one. I have a Husky 1000 since I was a kid. So that's a pretty neat transmission in itself. I just don't like the worm drive set up in them. But that's a true posi solid axle. And I would say most of these Peerlesses are the same way. I think they all have the same carrier in them that allows that limited slip. Because you could, if you could test it, you could literally take your tractor, hook up to a tree on, say, a good frosty morning or whatever, hook up to a tree with a chain and just ease into it, and you'll see both wheels spinning forward at slow ground speed, so to speak, or you don't have the forward pedal pushed all the way down. But as soon as you push that forward pedal down all the way, one wants to break loose and the other one just sits there. So it becomes an open differential. And as you can see, I tried to explain it. I hope you guys understand it. I wish I had a better camera and like 3 guys to help me like set this up and hold it in place while we could see it while it was open. But when you bolt it back together with the long bolts put together, you really can't, you can't see it. So I hope you understand, you got the gist of it. So, you know, am I wrong? Maybe. Am I right? Maybe. I don't know. I just know that they have that little limited slip, and I've had these apart before, just for shits and giggles, so to speak, because I've really never had one break on me. I needed an axle, I needed a housing. Well, because of my first faux pas, that's why. So I have torn them apart to see the innards of them, but this is my first video on them to explain it, how that sort of limited slip works in it. As you can see with the outside carriers that go inside that ring gear. So it does work. You can test it out on all your Fords or Jacobsons. I would assume, now this was an older one from an open side, so I would imagine it was blue. So I would imagine they kept it the same. I'm not 100%. They could have always changed the internals on these, on the newer ones. I've never had a newer one apart, a open side, or like say a newer Steiner one. So I don't know if they all have it, but I know certain ones. I know the older ones always seem to have it. I can't put a finger on the newer ones like from the 80s. They may not. I don't know. So anyhow, I hope these videos are helping. I hope you learned something a little bit about these. You can handle these yourself. This ain't that big of a deal. It's actually easier to take this transmission apart than the Gear Drive Peerless. The Gear Drive Peerless is more of a pain in the pardon my language, pain in the butt than this Hydro. The Hydro is really easy, and it's funny. The Hydro hardly ever fails unless you do something dumb like me, like let it coast into a tree. Usually the pumps go out, and even that, honestly, I maybe sell 1 or 2 hydro pumps a year. That's it. That's how indestructible these are. You could literally fill them up with the wrong transmission oil, and they usually leak like a sieve with ATF. And then I've actually had customers drain the ATF, put the universal trans hydraulic in, and the leak went away. Which I can get that, because different oils will cause different rubber products to swell, expand, contract, crack, break, whatever. That's why I think it's a big deal why they say to put the universal trans hydraulic oil in it. I think ATF is more of a corrosive resistant. That's why they put them in automatic transmissions to keep it from rusting because of all the condensation. I think that's every oil. I'm not an oil chemist or anything like that, so I don't know. I just know why they recommend them, because there's certain properties of the oil that's made for them pumps and transmissions. Like you wouldn't take Dextron Mercon 3, which was used in my 67 Mustang, and put it in your brand new F-150 or your 2004 Ford Ranger. It calls for a different oil. Everything calls for a certain spec for whatever reason, and I just follow manufacturers on that. So if you're having problems with your transmission, you need some parts. I have plenty of used parts here for these. Like I said, you can get gaskets. I can get gaskets. There's places online for gasket seals, stuff like that. We do have them here on stock for the most part. So if you need something, usually it's the outer axle seal that goes out in these all the time. It's because usually these transmissions are never apart. It's usually that axle seal that leaks because, well, paint. Believe it or not, paint. And just being old over the period of years and not being used and being used or whatever have you, it's usually the outer seals that go bad. It's usually not the inner ones. So it's usually the outer seals that go bad. And we have them on stock. They're on the website, www.fordjacobsontractor.com. So anyhow, This is probably the last video we do for a while, so I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year's, Happy Hanukkah, everything. It doesn't matter. Have a good time, spend time with your family, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.